this opportunity to welcome everyone to our City of Little Rock Board of Directors special called meeting. We want to welcome those that are here in attendance and as well as those watching via online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the roll.
Mayor, I don't think we have 8. Director Phillips is in the parking lot.
Director Miller, Director Richardson, Director Peck.
Here.
Director Hines,
Present.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Wyrick,
Present.
Director Campiris, Director Phillips, Director Adcock,
Present.
Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Scott.
Here. We'll now ask City Director Wyrick if she would please give the invocation.
Somehow I knew you were going to do that. Thank you so much for this honor.
Me either.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for the rain that we've had just recently. It makes our grass and flowers grow, keeps public works in business. I do appreciate all the things that you do for us, and please be with us in this meeting this afternoon, that we make the right decisions for our constituents, for the people. Be with all of our first responders, police, fire, public works, all of those folks that do such a great job for our citizens in the city, and be with each and every one of us here, and safe travels home. Amen.
Amen. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm here.
Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item 1 for the second time.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to enter into a sole source contract with Unite Private Network in amount not to exceed $135,635 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of equipment and service to connect a fiber-based telecommunications network for the East Little Rock Community Center and for the purposes funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to enter into a sole source contract with Unite Private Network in an amount not to exceed $135,635 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of equipment and service to connect the fiber-based telecommunications network for the East Little Rock Community Center, third and final reading.
Members of the board, we've had 3 readings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 2 for the second time.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend a 1-year sole source agreement with City Year Incorporated in amount not to exceed $100,000 to establish an education program relative to the city's educational initiative for use by the Little Rock School District, to declare an emergency and for the purposes second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend a 1-year sole source agreement with City Year Incorporated in amount not to exceed $100,000 to establish an education program relative to the city's educational initiative for use by the Little Rock School District, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Members of the board, we've had 3 readings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. There's also an emergency clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 3 for the second time.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to award a contract to Aptus Financial to assist eligible city employees to seek student loan forgiveness, to establish an initial fee and an annual renewal fee, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to award a contract to Aptus Financial to assist eligible city employees to seek student loan forgiveness, to establish an initial fee and an annual renewal fee, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Director Computers.
Just a quick word of support for this. St. Vincent's has done this at the hospital when we found out about this, and they've done it twice. The first time, they've forgiven $500,000 worth of loans, and now the second time, they think it's going to be $1 million. So it's a big deal for our people to help them do this sort of thing.
Thank you so much, Director Computers. Really do appreciate that support of our team members. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. I believe there's an emergency clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Motion to adjourn this meeting, then move to our agenda meeting.
So moved.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. Agenda meeting started. Members of the board, any questions on items? Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions on items 1 through 3?
12.
1 through 12? Did the wrong agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Director Computers, is your hand still up? Was that from earlier?
No.
Director Phillips?
Yes, Mayor, and this may be for the city manager. Have we, and forgive me if I forgot this, but have we decided what to do? This relates to number 7, I apologize. In that space, after that building is moved or demolished, do we have plans for that space?
We do. That's where the new district court building would be.
Okay. I must have missed that. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Yes, on item 5, I would like more information, please.
Yes, Assistant Chief Miller. And as he's coming, Director Adcock, this is a routine grant that we've continued to receive, but Chief Miller can go in greater detail.
I think one of my questions is, I understand that some of this goes to Pulaski County. And could you tell me why part of it goes to Pulaski County instead of all of it in Little Rock?
That part, I will have to get some more information as to what goes to Pulaski County.
I can help. This grant is based on a population, and so we're the entity that applies for it, but it's based on population, and for the last 20 years, Pulaski County has always gotten a portion of the funding.
Okay, now why again is that?
Again,
Since
it's
our
based on,
population has increased.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Since our population has increased, so we are not large enough to receive the whole grant?
We're not.
Okay. So is it all Pulaski County or just the area of Pulaski County?
It's Little Rock and Pulaski County.
Is it all Pulaski County or just the area of Pulaski County that is in the Little Rock area?
Correct. It's just the area that's in Little Rock is part of Pulaski County.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Director Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is regarding number 7. When we first got this information, the account number was left where the funds were going to come from for the fiscal impact. It wasn't filled in. Now it is. Could someone tell me what
Okay, go to the next.
this account number is and where these funds are coming from? What is that?
Which item, Director Miller?
It's on item number 7. Because initially, when we got it last week, there was no account number for fiscal impact. Now there is one, so I'm trying to figure out where this came from. What account number is this?
Sure. We, the board voted to, and I can't remember when we voted on this, but, when you all voted on it, but we set aside money in a special project for the demolition of the building. So it's a special project fund that's set up. Because we knew in visiting with Mr. Collins with the asbestos and everything, it was going to take a significant amount of money to demolish the building. And so we did in a budget amendment, and we'll get that information to you, set up a special project for it.
Okay, so this is just a one-off account?
Correct.
This has this one item in it? Okay, all right, thank you.
Director Wire, then Director Phillips, and yeah.
Okay.
Mine is in the next group. If
The
it's-
next group?
Yeah.
Director Phillips, your question, Jermaine?
Yeah, just in number 7, and forgive me, I've been all over the place lately, but if this is for the district court building, which was approved through the bond, why wouldn't this come out of the bond proceeds?
When we decided to move the police headquarters, the bond issue had not passed and wasn't even really on the consideration list, so that's the reason.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. All right, thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Director Wire?
Mine is item number 13, and we're modifying the code, and I just want to know what this means to the R4 zoning that this addresses.
Sure, if Director Collins would approach, and as Director Adcock, I saw your hand. Is your hand?
Yes, it is. It's also on number 13.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mayor, members of the board, Director Wyrick, what this is R4 zoning is for a 2-family zoning. So typically what you've seen in the past is actually what you have on a couple of them before you this evening on the agenda is R4 zoning has been duplexes. That's what our zoning is decided to be when we went through that and the policy was implemented in ordinance adoption. What we had is probably about maybe a year and a half ago, we was approached by several developers that are doing work in areas that R4 zoning is located that then had discussion about, does a 2-family lot have to be just a duplex? Could you separate them out and have a 2-family lot, but 2 separate structures without subdividing the lot? So they would both be owned by one entity, and it would allow one ownership and then also another one being rented. So think of like what you see in some things that's come before you, a main property and then an accessory dwelling. And so we worked through with some developers for setbacks, how that would look, ownership, how we'd take care of some drainage and parking issues. So that is what is before the board. We're not changing the density of R2. It is still a 2-family district. It is essentially taking what would be only a duplex and allowing 2 detached structures on that same lot to accommodate. So it gives a little feel of more single-family atmosphere, each family in an individual structure, but it does not mean that it has to be attached anymore in a duplex. And so some of that stuff you see on there as far as setbacks and everything is accommodating pursuant to the Arkansas Building Code for safety and also for drainage and adjacent alleyways and other situations.
If I understand what you're saying, in the past, it's meant like 1 structure, 2 families.
Yes.
And this would take the 1 structure, 2 families, separate them, and you still have one lot, you have two families, but they're in separate buildings.
That's correct.
How many opportunities do we have for that?
Well, so there is some vacant R4 zone property, primarily south of 630, in the part of Ward 1 and Ward 2, primarily. There are R4 properties that have duplexes on it. I can't tell you the percentage. I can get that for you on what's occupied and unoccupied. But it would not, for us, it would not change the density of what we have already approved at a board level for R4 zoning, and any new R4 zoning proposed would be an amendment to that zoning, like if they were R2 or R3 and wanted to go R4, it'd come back before the board. So this only affects what has been zoned previously, R4, and would affect any future zoning going to R4, and you could look at that separately.
So it appears to me that if you have two families, one building, that condenses the amount of space that they would need on a lot. So there is going to be some setbacks. I mean, it appears that the lots would have to be bigger. Where is the information for setbacks, between the buildings, between the lot lines? Where is all that? And what is the minimum lot standard for an R4 separated two structures?
I thought that we placed that in the board communication. I'll have to get that for you. The setbacks are based on a percentage of lot as it stands now. The only reduction that I remember was a reduction of the front setback, which was the 25 feet on the standard R4 zone lot would go down to 15 feet
Okay.
for the front setback.
Okay, I'm looking at that, but I'm not following what that says. It says a reduction of the front building line setback from 25 to 15 feet. Are we talking about from the street to the building?
From the right-of-way to the building,
Okay,
which
from the
may,
right-of-way to the building.
yes.
Okay, and then what would be the size? What's the minimum standard for the lots? I mean, we have shrunk those minimum standards down for R2 to really small. What would be the minimum standard lot size, and then what would be the width of the lots? We've had some stuff come through where it was like 35 feet across the front for some single families, but the length of the lot contributed to the overall minimum lot standard. What would be the minimum lot standard for this? What can we expect to see? Would you see an R4 like a building in the front and a building in the back and maybe a road to get back to them, a drive to get back to them? What would be some of the standard configurations for this?
Well, what we have in the ordinance proposal is 7,000 square feet is the minimum
7,000?
for it.
Okay,
The lot width is 70 feet.
that's the minimum?
That's the minimum. That's what it stands right now.
But this is not going to change that?
And the minimum lot depth, no, that is not proposed to be changed,
Okay.
is 100 feet. Now, there are lots out there that are zoned R4 currently that do not meet that minimum.
Exactly. In the downtown area, particularly where there's R4 that's already zoned, they're smaller lots. So in order to do this configuration, they've got to meet the 7,000 square feet.
We would look at that when you rezone, if it's already R4, then it would come into this change of deal. It's not excluding those that are out there right now to have to come back in.
So even though they're less than 7,000 square feet, they can do this configuration with the two buildings.
Well, there's other minimums that are on there, like the rear yard, the side yards, that would accommodate that, because the side yards are set by a percentage on there.
Okay, let me ask it again. there are R4 lots that are already out there that do not meet the 7,000 square feet.
That's correct.
But they'll be able to do this configuration with two separate buildings on one lot.
If they meet all the other criteria that is set in here, which some of them are, the rear dwelling shall have a setback of not less than 5 feet from the rear of the structure to the property boundary within the rear dwelling. So they have to propose what they're putting in is based upon what the two dwelling sizes are and how it's accommodated on the lot.
I think this is a challenge to do this in those areas where they're already zoned R4, but they don't meet the 7,000 square feet.
And they do. We also have some R2 property in the same areas that they don't meet that property even today on single family. So when something comes in and proposes, they don't meet some of the minimums now. So when somebody comes, if it's an existing house that was already built, prior to the subdivision regulations, then they're a lot of record and we have to deal with those under variance requests. This one is it has a standard 5-foot side yard setback, and I talked about the rear yard. And the main one is the front yard being reduced from 25 to 15. But then there's also caveats in there about you also want to look at what the nearest properties are looking at, what their setbacks are. So in other words, if somebody's coming in R4 and every house on that lot is at 25 feet, that reduction may not apply to them to put that in. You still want the form of that single family in there.
And who makes the decision on that? Is that something that the Planning Commission says you don't meet the minimum standards and so you can't bring forth this zoning? Or you can't build this building? At what point is that decision made?
Well, if it's a standard, one that's zoned properly right now, R4, then if it's a variance to that, then it would have to go through the Planning Commission, but it's not a conditional use at that time. It's you're having a variance for whatever that setback is. So the Board of Adjustments can approve some of those as far as encroachment into rear yard is what this is, based upon the ordinance even currently that we have. So if they have a side yard setback encroachment or a rear yard setback and they meet the other criteria, then that's a Board of Adjustment. It's not necessarily a Planning Commission.
Okay. Well, you're saying you're not changing the density by doing this, but it kind of feels like to me that you are. Because you have two separate buildings as opposed to one building. And I'm concerned about the people on either side and in the back. And I know there's a way to add more structures on a lot, but I think about what it would feel like to those locations that already have homes there and to come in with two different structures on one of these small lots. And the fact that they can still do it if it doesn't meet minimum standards, that's concerning to me as well. That's just my thoughts about it. I read this and I wasn't exactly sure what we were doing with this, but now it seems like it's problematic to me. That's it.
Thank you. Director Adcock?
Yes, I'm like Director Wyrick. I was very concerned about what is under D2 and D3, but I think that I will be voting no on this because of what is under C2. And if I may read it, a two-family district shall be the same as those in R2, R3, R1, except that. Now, this is what we're going to allow on these two buildings on one lot. It can be a day camp, day nursery, accessory dwelling, a daycare center, an adult daycare center, and a manufactured home may be allowed as conditional uses in all four approved by, and this was another concern, they have taken out evidently city board and put planning commission. So we've got planning commission making this new zoning in all four, which will allow daycares, small business, a manufactured home, and I think this goes way beyond changes that I would like to see us being made in our neighborhoods. And I'm like Director Wyrick, I think that this is much too small. Some of this is only 10% with backyards, and I think that we should seriously look at this. And this that I was talking about is under C2 under the write-up under this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Wyrick, is your hand still up?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'll take it down. Thank you.
Members of the board, any questions on the remaining items, 13 through 20? Any questions on the remaining items, 13 through 20?
Mayor.
Director Hines?
13 through 20. Oh, I'm sorry, this is on 21.
Director Adcock, is your hand still up for 13
Yes.
through 20?
Item 20,
Yes, ma'am.
I would have some questions on that, please, Mr. Collins. What is the use of this going to be?
They just want to rezone it for C3, general commercial, just for future commercial development for that property.
Okay, when this person was before the Southwest Ups, they was talking about a garage, fixing up wrecked vehicles, garage repair. We have got two new neighborhoods that is located right beside this, and we are putting a repair shop by two neighborhoods. I think that we need to really look at that. So they have just told you it's for general use?
Yes, just general use C3. Also want to note for the city clerk that this item was recommended the denial by staff for this one.
And I don't believe it's in Ward 7. I think it's in Ward 2.
Director Rock, I will check that. But yes, there was no conditions placed on the use of property, it's just C3.
Okay, I would like for you to check with the person developing it, because I don't think it's fair to new homes to now have a car repair shop put in their backyard. So I'd like some more information on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Director Hines?
Thank you. Just a clarification from LRPD on what a Pharaoh system is. I understand what the robots are, the bomb squad and SWAT. What's a Pharaoh system for the police?
Chief Miller?
Yes, sir. It's basically a survey. It would be kind of applicable survey system like they use to, it sends lasers out and does a 3D map of a crime scene.
Okay.
Is what it does. It gives us
All
a
right.
3D image.
Okay. I think we've approved this once before.
Yes, sir.
Replacement, I take it. All right. Thank you.
Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. This is on item number 24. I think it's for Director Collins. Director Collins, I've read the write-up on this one and just want some clarity for myself and for questions when I get asked. But this is the first short-term rental application since the board approved the new short-term rental ordinance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I guess I want a little context, if you will, I know the planning commission approved it unanimously, but the staff recommended denial. And I want to make sure I understand the reasoning behind that. If this person went through all the steps that we're requiring them to go through now to get a short-term rental, why did the staff feel that this was not appropriate.
Okay, understand. If we could bring up the zoning map, it will really explain why. And while she's doing that, several of the board members has been here on the board for a while, understands the Birchwood neighborhood. So I'm going to start explaining. Development has went around Birchwood on Markham, Bowman, Shackelford, Financial Center Parkway, and recently they come out in opposition to subdivision that was going to happen, zero lot line that was close to them on the Financial Center Parkway side. So if you look at this, this is really the first, I would say, rezoning of a short-term rental in that area. So staff's recommendation was based upon it was not at a periphery of the subdivision. It was internal to the subdivision. It doesn't really have direct access. It's not coming off of Markham or Autumn Road. You're getting into the subdivision. So just out of the comments we received by the Birchwood neighborhood, when they come out in opposition to development, staff recommended denial based upon that there was no other short-term rental there. And you are changing this to essentially a commercial property for use as a business for short-term rental. So we felt like it was too soon. There's not, other planned developments, commercial for a short-term rental in the area. The commercial that's adjacent to it really accesses those main roads I talked about. It's really secluded in itself when you get into that neighborhood because of the creek that's to the north and just the vegetation that has grown up over the years. It is secluded. And so that's why our recommendation went forward as denial.
And if I understood the write-up correctly, none of the neighbors opposed it, though, right?
That is correct. Nobody was in opposition at the Planning Commission hearing.
And you said it wasn't on the periphery, so are we, and this is what I'm concerned about, that someone's gonna reach out to me and say, y'all passed a new law, I've complied with all the laws, and now I still can't operate a short-term rental because it's not at the periphery of a neighborhood? Is that a precedent that we're trying to set?
No, sir, that's just when you're looking at a change of use, even if we was looking at it for any dense like multifamily or some other type of use in there, we look for what a neighborhood currently is. This is all a single family neighborhood. And so whenever you start bringing in, just like we talked about, even R4 duplex zoning or some other type of change of a single family use, we're looking for the density of what other things are happening around it. And currently there's nothing in the subdivision that's happening. So when I talk about the periphery, we do look at what the adjacent properties are. So as you get closer to those boundaries, like I said, Markham, Shackelford, Financial Center, more of a change of use to more of a commercial zoning or that short-term rental for us is more compatible, more of a transition rather than just inside, not necessarily the middle of the neighborhood, but not necessarily on the periphery.
And I just want to be clear, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, Director Collins, but wouldn't most short-term rentals be single-family homes? So isn't that an issue we're going to have most of the time, where we're saying that someone's using their home that they own as a short-term rental in a single-family neighborhood? Like, that seems like that's going to be an issue every time, or most of the time, I should say.
It will be an option, the thing that we look at every time, because we will look at the density that is along the road, because you can change the look of a property. There's a difference having like one short-term rental on a block and having the entire block be short-term rentals. It could change that block. And so it will be, something that we need to look at every time and bring it to the Planning Commission and the board's attention on whether we would support it or deny it. We are just presenting our recommendation based on that.
Okay, and obviously I respect your recommendation and respect the work of the Planning Commission too. Just want to make sure that I have the context in case, anyone reaches out to me about this going forward. Thank you, Director Collins. That's all I have, Mayor.
Director Miller?
Yes, thank you, Director Collins, maybe for you too on number 18. I had received a phone call from one of the neighbors who's concerned about the R4 and the duplex that they want to build there. This, from my understanding, so if a person calls me back, when if we approve something like that, where do the people park? Is there parking driveway required for 2 cars? So that'd be 4 cars. How does this work?
Whenever the single family comes in or any type of duplex, there is a parking count that we use for that, so that we come up with what is needed for that to operate for that standard. Typically, single family residential, the driveway suffices for what our standards would be, even though you may have multiple people in the home with vehicles. A driveway can accommodate at a minimum 2 vehicles. Even at a 20-foot width. If the driveway is more than, or the garage, whatever they're parking in, more than around 25, 30 feet, you could typically get a couple in before it gets to a sidewalk or a roadway. And then we also allow parking on the roadway, because there are several areas of town, not a dominant area of town. Hillcrest is one of those. Capitol View Stiff Station area is one of those where homes were built without driveways, that their parking was on the roadway. And we count that in the accommodation as can one be used out there, although they're not guaranteed to have that spot on the roadway. We do take that into consideration when something comes in our recommendation.
So with this development, it'd be required to have the driveways? 2 driveways? This is a duplex.
It is something that we would look at. A lot of times we look at having, if they're joining and they may be on a little bit wider lot, especially like a corner lot, we may request that they combine the drives to 1. And then when they pull off of the roadway, split off to their separate uses for their property, or have parking accommodated with that.
So at this point, we don't know what the developer...
At this point, we do not know. It is just straight zoning request.
And I don't know if the person who called me was one of the 3 objectors there, but what were their concerns about it? Do you recall?
Well, I believe that the objectors showed up at the June hearing, and then it was deferred. I do not have any notes that anybody spoke in opposition at the July hearing.
So do you know if they were notified? I mean, they came to the July meeting, but they didn't come to the June meeting? Is that, or vice versa?
I'll go check the notifications, but whenever it is deferred at that time, they do go back out for that, and I will make sure I get you that notification for it.
So when the developer does bring the plans, you have to take a look at the plans and what the parking will be before you give them approval on that?
Yes, before the building permit is issued, we look at all that access points to make sure that they are providing parking as required. I mean, that is any type of straight zoning when they come in, that's site plan review and the building permit level. And if they cannot meet the code, then they have to go seek a variance with the Board of Adjustments.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks for that information.
Director Pack?
Just a correction on number 24. It's not in Ward 6, it's in Ward 4.
Yes, ma'am.
It used to be in Ward 6.
All right, and next week we'll have some appointments to discuss. We'll now transition to, as I shared, as we continue to lead up to the public meetings that'll start next Monday in Ward 4. I believe City Director Peck's ward will be kicked off with the number of public meetings as it relates to the sales tax. I shared that I would set aside time leading up to those community meetings for members of the city board to discuss a sales tax, discuss a potential sales tax to go before the people of Little Rock as we explore this opportunity and get some additional feedback from residents. Any questions from members of the board or talking points of discussion? I see Director Warwick's hand.
Yes, sir. It was not about the sales tax proposal, but I had a question about 25. Do we not have open positions at the Planning Commission? I'm thinking we had one vacancy, and then we have another one that has not appeared in several months that probably ought to be a vacancy. So I'm thinking we need to be looking for a couple of
We'll check that. I believe the one vacancy has been fulfilled, but we'll confirm and get that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. As it relates to the sales tax proposal, I know that citizens can go on our city website and pull down the items that were put in the draft form that you've given out to the board. That's correct. I've gone to a number of meetings, and I was asked this question: is there any place where a citizen can go and get more information about each line item? Specifically, where is it going to be in more detail? Or is that just filling in at this point? Because I couldn't answer some of these questions.
Sure. Many times, as I look through, there are only a few things that aren't specific, and the reason why is just due to engineering and design and things of that nature. But what we will do is during these public meetings, kind of go into get a little bit more granular detail. So please encourage them to come to the public meetings. But again, this is a draft, and so there's nothing specific until the city board approves. But until that meantime, we want to make certain there's consensus with the city board. And so prior to a vote, as we get closer to a vote, whenever a vote is, there'll be a lot more specifics on the things that may not be as specific. I don't know if that answers that question. Because it could be something on here today, but we may hear something in the public meetings, or you all may say, hey, for me to be supportive, I need to see X, Y, and Z, and that could change.
Okay, so
we're really in the exploration process, and hopefully if we can get to a vote, there'll be a lot more specificity on specific things. But for instance, I'll give you a great example on public infrastructure. We don't know yet which streets or sidewalks, but we know there's a list of pages upon pages we got about $1 billion worth of work to be done. But we also got to figure out, as we've done in the millage tax presentation, that when we make those decisions off that big list, we figure out what's the greatest impact to the residents, the cost and engineering design and safety, and we make a decision from there. So I don't know if that helps.
It helps some. And as it relates to the sports complex or the fields, the more softball fields, our regional sports complex, I was asked specifically, is that at War Memorial Park? Is that what we're talking about for that?
Yes, at this time. So just for members of the board, if you will recall, the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau funded back in 21 early 22, they funded a sports feasibility study based on their research as it relates to youth sports from an economic development perspective and a tourist perspective, as well as families. They believe this is the best location to have a youth sports complex in the city of Little Rock, based on a number of different things in that sports feasibility study. That sports feasibility study has been refreshed to see what it would look like, and so that's the reason why we're able to get that type of specificity within this from that standpoint. But the answer would be yes at this time. But again, nothing's written in concrete. but there's been a lot of due diligence done by those in the tourism industry and those who are experts to say that this is probably the best place.
Okay, all right, thank you. So it's still, when the community members are saying, we'd like to look at maybe more housing or more money for code enforcement or more money for subsidized housing, those things can be, this is a document that can be changed. Is that what we're looking at?
It definitely is a document that can be changed, but I will share this is probably the best foot forward based off of staff feedback who have done the research to get to this point. Clearly, if you gave a great example of affordable housing, I will share that in the last sales tax initiative that failed in 22, it did include affordable housing. And so in talking to many members of the board before we even made the proposal, so a lot of work was done, as you know, to get to this point. Many members of the board felt that we should not address affordable housing through the sales tax, but through the additional dollars that we do with the federal government and city funds. And so that was a concession I wouldn't say it's a concession, that's listening to the members of the city board, trying to get the best package for you all to get on the ballot. But we do have homelessness. But that, if you would like to see affordable housing, that's something I'll continue to visit with members of the boards and try to get. Ultimately, is what package can get majority of the board to say yes.
Yeah, I understand, because again, Big Country Chateau, we're still dealing with that.
I agree.
And we certainly are saying there are probably more complexes out there like that. And if we run into these same situations, obviously we got to have some type of response for that, some place for people to go. And
I would say, Director Miller, I do think, one, it's good to know, and not that we are going to pat our team on their back. City of Little Rock does a lot in affordable housing that other cities are just not doing if they are doing, it's not at the scale. Director Howard and his team has been lauded from a regional and a state, federal standpoint, what they're doing. And they've done a lot with the funds that they have, but they definitely could have used a lot more. And as you know, as you go to your neighborhood meetings, residents are asking for more. So I totally will take that note down on affordable housing.
okay, all right, thank you.
Director Phillips?
Yeah, yes, Mayor, just real quick, this not related to sales tax, but Director Miller reminded me of something. Just wanted to put it on your and the city manager's radar to, we need to schedule the second part of the affordable housing discussion with the partners that we wanted to bring to the table. Just wanted to make sure that we were still working on that. To Director Miller's point, people are still wanting to know what we can do at this time. And I know we said we was going to get different partners involved for kind of a working session. So I just wanted to make sure that was still on the agenda to get done.
It's on August 29th.
It's going to be on August 29th?
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Board members, any more questions on the sales tax before we go to the public meetings? All right. We will now transition to today's policy agenda discussion or update on a potential or proposed Little Rock Public Safety Commission. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Ashley's passing around the draft ordinance.
Feel speaking to the mic.
Oh,
Lower it.
is that better? Awesome. All right, well, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Board. My name is Christopher Harvey. I serve as Senior Advisor to Mayor Frank Scott Jr., and I'm here to talk about the proposed Public Safety Commission that came from one of the primary recommendations from the Hope Advisory Council. And so just a quick background of what got us here to this point. Back in April of 2022, the Hope Advisory Council was formed, and it consisted of members of the community, pastors, judges, and City of Little Rock officials. And the whole purpose of the actual Hope Advisory Council was for them to come up with creative and innovative ideas to address violent crime. So between April of 2022 through November 2022, the Hope Advisory Council met. They separated into 3 different subcommittees where they were doing work. And as you all are aware, they submitted those final recommendations here at the November 29th agenda meeting last year. And so one of those primary recommendations that came out of the Hope Advisory Council was the creation of an actual public safety commission. And before I move forward, I do want to recognize that we do have some members of the Hope Advisory Council that have joined us here this afternoon. Just ask you all to just please stand so the members can see who's here. So I want to thank you all for being able to be here this afternoon. So I want to get down into exactly what the Public Safety Commission will consist of. When we talk about the objectives, the most important thing that we want this commission to be able to do is to be able to provide an avenue for residents to be able to voice their concerns when it comes to public safety issues. And then making sure that once they are able to have a way to voice those concerns, we are looking for ways to be able to come up with actual community-based solutions that will allow for them to solve those particular issues. Whether that's coming up with new innovative ideas, or they currently see that there are certain things that we're currently doing now that may need to be tweaked, that may need to be edited to make it better, to make it more efficient. And so that is one of the things that we are looking as one of the objectives for the Public Safety Commission. And when we talk about goals, those things are, again, having recommendations that will go towards violence reduction. And something that's real important, we want to continue in making sure that we are fostering effective relationships between the community and our police department. And also, one of the things that I'm really excited about is making sure that this commission has a broad perspective of diverse opinions, of diverse thoughts in how we address public safety. And I want to jump more into that with the next slide as we talk about how the actual Public Safety Commission will be comprised of. So for membership, we'll have 7 members. So that's 1 member from each of the 7 wards. And then we'll also have 6 at-large members that will be comprised of the membership of the Public Safety Commission. We also will want to have 2 members from the city board to serve as the city board liaisons to this commission. And then the other commission liaisons will have 1 mayor's office staff representative, and then we'll also have a representative from LRPD serving to become a part of the actual commission moving forward with that. And I want to bring this up because this is something that I've been hearing quite a lot since we've been talking about what the Public Safety Commission will be comprised of. I know there were a few directors that had expressed concerns that with the Public Safety Commission that it would be duplicative of what some of the other committees and commissions and boards are doing. And so I want to address it head on to show that there will be a difference. Each commission has its own special lane that they can focus on. And one of the biggest comparisons that come up is about how does this commission compares to CYF, Children, Youth, and Families Commission. We know that that commission focuses specifically on PIT, so prevention, intervention, and treatment funding. And then with the Citizens Review Board, that focuses more on accountability. And so with the Public Safety Commission, this gives a special avenue for us to really focus on those community-based solutions and have the community involved in being able to make decisions, because we know at the end of the day, no matter where you stay here in the city of Little Rock, whether it's Ward 4 or Ward 1, Ward 5 or Ward 6, everyone has a right to feel safe, and everyone should be able to express how they would like to see public safety prioritized here in the city. And so I think this is a really great way for residents to be able to have an active voice in how public safety is prioritized in the city. And again, those recommendations, those solutions that the commission will come up with, these are recommendations. So, you know, it would be up to the city board to accept them, but this gives a really great way for us to be able to have a blanket way to making sure that we're hearing all the different issues when it comes to public safety here in the city of Little Rock. And just kind of looking at some of the positive outcomes that we can see with, you know, the Public Safety Commission, where the, you know, comprehensive crime reduction. So again, talking about those strategies that the commission would be able to recommend. They would be able to suggest, you know, maybe we might need to do something different. We talk about community-driven solutions. That is going to be the key for the Public Safety Commission. Transparent decision-making, data-driven strategies. One of the biggest things that we want to make sure, and why we have a representative from LRPD as part of the commission, is to make sure that we have access to the latest data. You know, I know that we know here in the city of Little Rock, we have some really great data professionals, Jim Brooks from LRPD and Marquise Willis, who serves as our chief data officer, will be able to provide information if the commission seeks it, whether that's on Citizens Connect or any information I know that Jim always provides to us when we're talking about some of the work that we're doing in our crime reduction strategy meetings. You know, we talk about improved quality of life. When we see that some of the solutions, potential solutions and recommendations that the Public Safety Commission could come up with, we know that can really go to increasing quality of life here in the city. And then progress evaluation. Well, some of the recommendations, if the city board decides to take them up, we can also see, are these recommendations working? Are these solutions working? Do we need to go back and see where we missed something? So provides a really great way for us to consistently making sure that we're able to see how things are progressing. And so with that said, definitely want to have this opportunity to answer any questions or comments that members of the board have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harvey, and to the members of the Hope Advisory Council. We share your appreciation. I believe the close to 8 to 9 months that you spent sharing feedback in some of our city's highest crime wave, and really being involved during that period of time. And then secondly, not only did you have those meetings, you provided recommendations to members of the city board in November of last year. We do know the intent was to bring this before the city board as far as to act upon recommendations from you early this spring, but we do know due to the tornado, we shifted a lot of priorities and wanted to bring this back. So definitely want to share appreciation to the time that each of you and the many more we know that couldn't necessarily make it here today at 4 o'clock, but grateful for those, I believe 4 or 5 that we see that are here, part of, at least it was maybe 20 or so that are part of that process, and just wanted to share that appreciation. Members of the board, any questions? Director Compiers?
Sorry, this all sounds great, and of course I've messed up my computer, so I couldn't raise my hand the normal way. But let me just, and I think all these goals are great, the benefits and the positive outcomes, but how do you see, if you make a recommendation, do you have funding to implement those recommendations?
Well, that will be up to the city board to decide, and I think that's a great question, because when we think about what the CYF Commission does. And again, I think this addresses the issue of having duplicative efforts. We know that the CYF Commission focuses on the funding for different prevention, intervention, and treatment programming. With the Public Safety Commission, if one of the recommendations from this commission comes out that something that could require funding, the commission, they can put that on there, but at the end of the day, that would be up to the city board of directors to be able to decide that maybe this is something that we should consider funding. The whole goal of this is just to have community input when it comes to public safety. A lot of times we hear residents, they have concerns about, is the city listening to my issues of, what I feel is important to us? And so this provides them a method to be able to suggest not only what the issues are, but also to provide solutions. So if that's something that you all see fit, that the recommendation is good enough for it, that it should have funding, then that will be up to the city board to be able to decide.
And that all sounds great, but does this undercut a group that we already have going that has funding?
No, Director Campiris, I would answer. The CYF, as I think we all know, historically it's been funded since the mid-90s, was somewhere around $5.5 million. Again, that is a grant management funding process to do for community-based organizations to do direct assistance in the effort to prevent crime, youth violence, intervention, and treatment. Again, part of as Chief Helton, who couldn't be here today, but is very supportive, part of 21st century community policing is ensuring that at all costs that the city is creating avenues for community input. Again, we don't foresee that many of the recommendations, if any, will have a lot to do with funding. It could be certain things that the police department may be doing, and maybe not necessarily a police department, but just a community effort. And if that was to require funding, of course, it would come to the city board. But again, this is more of a vacuum heavy on the community input versus existing funding. We're not looking to fund programs. We have that with CYF, as well as with the Citizen Review Board. That's another lane where it's basically if a law enforcement action has happened, and then after the fact, after it's gone through its administrative process, if the community has an issue with that law enforcement action, they can request a hearing of the Citizen Review Board. To date, we've only had 2. And guess what? That's a good thing. I want to applaud Chief Helton and the law enforcement community for that. You never want to see a lot of them, but if something was to happen there. So again, this is to really have a venue for community feedback and input. Again, this is what in our city's most interesting crime era, 20 folks who've really been embedded in the community, understand what's going on. This is their recommendation, of course.
Can I ask?
Yes, sir.
Is there a model of this anywhere else?
Yes, sir. So there are other cities that have public safety commissions. Austin, Texas has a public safety commission. St. Paul, Minnesota, San Marino, California, Atlanta, Georgia, and as well New York City, Madison, Wisconsin, just to name a few, that all have public safety commissions that are comprised of members of the community that are able to actively make decisions on how public safety is prioritized in their cities.
But go back to your statement just then. Actively, say that again, actively?
They're able to actively participate in how public safety is prioritized in their cities.
Okay, but I thought this was a recommendation process.
Yes,
Director Campiris, it is.
Yes, sir. So it is. And so they have the ability to have recommendations sent before their city councils, and then the city council will vote to whether they want to uphold any of those recommendations. But there's still a process for them to be able to, again, have an active involvement in how public safety is handled in their cities.
Have you appeared before the Children's Youth and Family Commission to talk about this?
So I have not come before the commission, but I have had a conversation with Director Webb, who, as you know, serves on that commission as a board liaison. And I did share the same information with her, and she did share those same concerns about, is this duplicative of of other commissions, specifically CYF? And the same information that I shared with her is what I just shared with you, that there is a difference. I know that she was unable to be here this evening, but we did have a conversation about that, and she understood what that difference would be.
No, I would strongly encourage you. I think in principle this sounds great, but I see lots of pitfalls with taking one group and pitting it against another, saying we have this recommendation, having another group over there that has the money, and you have two board members that say we want to put this on, and we're creating not a harmonic way of dealing with the problem, which we need to deal with. So I hope that you and the mayor slow walk this before we have to vote on this, and go to the Kathy Webb's group and have them sit down with you and go over this and come back with us and talk about it some more, because in concept, I think it's really great, but when you talk about it, it sounds to me like we're empowering another group to come say, this is what we're going to do. And I just see conflict coming up if you don't follow one person's recommendations or another. So I'd rather have us all on the same page if we're going to vote on this. But right now, I've got more questions than answers.
Yes, sir. And I definitely think, want to, acknowledge that concern. And, one of the things that I was also thinking about as well, when we talk about making sure that essentially the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, when we talk about those commission liaisons. And again, that's something that can be etched in stone through the actual bylaws of the commission, but also having a representative from CYF to be a part of that commission, and vice versa, having a public safety member, commission member going and attending the CYF commissions to make sure that those wires aren't crossed. I do think, though, there is a separate lane with CYF focusing specifically on, that grant funding for programming, and with the Public Safety Commission being able to focus more specifically on actual violence reduction strategies. For example, we talk about neighborhood revitalization and blight, being able to focus on, hey, well, we think that the city should be spending more time and attention on at a higher pace of removing more unsafe vacant structures, or having more lighting in certain areas in the city. You can't have that conversation in CYF because that's not their lane. But for the Public Safety Commission, you'll be able to talk about things like that.
Well, I respectfully disagree with that overall blanket assertion, since I was one of the people that started that thing. And I think their lane, it sounds to me what you're doing is narrowing their lane and expanding yours. And
Director Campiris, I want to be very clear. This recommendation came from the community. So community representatives, if you'll go, we can share that with the members of the board. When they presented for about an hour back in November, there was a list of recommendations, one of which was a one-stop shop center that was discussed. And so, again, this is a recommendation from the community. As we know, many times there are task force, or it hasn't necessarily happened, I've made a point not to have a task force, and it's just a task force. Ultimately, it's going to take the city board to say yes or no on the recommendations, and that's fine. But I want to be very clear that these recommendations, this ordinance came from the people, the community who are experiencing the crime. And I do want to take this time to, again, share the difference. And I know Director Campiris, you and Director Richardson, and definitely want to praise the two of you all as the authors of the Prevention and Intervention Treatment Program. But I can assure you that what they are doing is completely different from community feedback. Yes, you have strong community leaders like a Larry Clark and LSY, or a Reverend Wilkerson in Bridge to Success, who are doing youth intervention work for youth in our city. And they are requesting funds to do their individual work in our city. And many times, if it was a business model, they could be competing with each other. But they're not, because there's a lot of help that our youth need. And so we're able to fund LSY, we're able to fund Bridge to Success on how to work with our youth in those individual and unique ways. What's not happening in those conversations, in those meetings, is a community violence reduction plan, certain strategies that are happening that we may not know just because it's something new going on right now. A great example, a lot of youth now, for whatever reason, want to wear hoodies in 90-degree weather. And how that impacts, we need to be able to share that with the members of the police officers, that, you know, this is a new phenomenon, and that how you approach even policing that. So from that standpoint, so again, this is a vacuum, not a vacuum, but an avenue to have productive conversations. And if out of that conversation is a recommendation, that would come, and one recommendation may be a policy with no funding. Another recommendation may be a program, if it is a program, but I highly doubt it would be a program, but that would be something for the city board. Again, there can always be agree to disagree, but from that standpoint, but I do think we have to honor the people who brought up this recommendation for the city board to act on. I do think I want to commend Mr. Harvey for spending time with Director Webb and sharing that. And so at a certain time, whether it's August 15th or September 5th, in honor of the work that the community members gave their time and attention to and said, hey, we want the city to address these things. Yes, I'll come to you, Director Adcock, that will bring that to, but Director Adcock, I believe Director Campiris still has the floor.
Well, and I'm not saying yes or no on it. I'm just saying that I see lots of pitfalls before we vote on it. And all I'm asking is that we cover all the bases before we act on it, rather than trying to come back later on and saying, here's the problem with it. And I think that just out of respect, you need to go to the whole commission and say, this is what we're going to do. I think that, you know, your point of having somebody on these different commissions, if we do this on the different groups, isn't on your flow chart right now. And it is something that you can hurry and get done and have a vote on, and may not have the vote you want, or take a little time to really work with everybody and work out the details. And that's the same thing we're trying to do with the tax. If you said, is everything that's going to be the same that we presented a week ago? No. But you've got to find some compromise. And right now, I would bet that there's some members of that group that are thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I would try to figure out a way to make everybody feel like we're trying to make things better, because that's what we all want to do.
No, thank you for that, Director Campiris. Director Adcock?
Yes. Chris, on the Public Safety Commission.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how are these people going to be selected? Is each ward director going to select one person from their ward?
So it would be just like the other commissions that have a representative from each of their wards. They submit their application online, and then so when you all go to executive session, you bring up, you know, the names. I've never been in executive session, so I don't know how.
Director Adcock, it'll be like every commission the members of the residents will submit an application. They have to be from that ward. I'll make the appointment, and it's subject to you all saying yes. It's not, you all will have to confirm the appointment.
One of my thoughts was we could end up with a commission, if we're not careful, made up of 2 or 3 wards when you add in the 6 at-large positions. That was a concern. Another concern of mine is over here on the commission liaisons.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, it's very easy for a group, either a commission or the board, for us to get to planning things and getting really excited about things, and all of a sudden we find out legally we can't do that. So I would like to recommend that we, on the commission liaison, have somebody from the city attorney's office that can say, we can't do it this way, we could turn it around, maybe do it that way. But instead of people going to all the work and everything, and at the end say, nope, you can't do it because of Arkansas law. So I would like to recommend that the commission liaisons has someone from the city attorney's office on there.
Yes, ma'am. And I think that's a great idea. And to address Director Adcock, your other concern about the 6 at-large members. And so this is for the Public Safety Commission. This is no new phenomenon. We know that there are 2 other commissions, so the Age-Friendly Commission and the Arts and Culture Commission, that actually have more than 6 at-large members, but also identically have a member from each ward that is part of that actual commission. But, you know, again, I think, you know, the Hope Advisory Council members can attest to this. During those conversations about how this particular commission should be structured, it was important for them to make sure that there was representation from the entire city. And so we wanted as many opportunities to be able to have as much representation as possible. So yes, we definitely will have 7 members, but also those 6 at-large members will be able to come from anywhere else in the city, and that creates even more diverse perspective for potential members to have. And also, you know, there are 5 other commissions that actually have more than 13 members. But definitely I appreciate that comment, and I do love the idea of having a city attorney's office representative there as part of the commission.
Getting off on a tangent and then find out, hey, all this work we've done,
Correct.
we can't do it. And also the mayor keeps reminding us that these people was elected or sent here by a group of people. I would also like for the mayor to remember that the city board, as well as he, is sent here by a group of people. So that's why, yes, we have questions and everything, and we want what is best for everyone. But it is a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And sometimes we need to slow down and make sure we get it right the first time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. We'll make certain that you have the city attorney liaison a part of that process, and very grateful for your feedback. Director Lewis.
Hi, I just want to say thanks, Chris, and thanks to everyone in attendance. I know some personally, and I understand the tragedy and the passion as to why this has come up in the first place. So I just want to put on record that I do support any opportunity where the community will get involved and want to come and take a stand, especially when it comes to this public safety aspect, and when it's not necessarily requiring the extra funding, but it's actually serving as a public platform for people to go and to pour into and get their concerns heard. So I just want to put that out there, that I do commend you all. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your effort. And if there's anything I can do, you know how to just reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Director Lewis, for sharing that support of a public platform for the people to communicate about law enforcement. Director Phillips.
Quick question, Mayor. Is there a timeline on when we will get the vote on this yet or not yet?
Sure. Again, a part of this policy agenda, the spirit on which it came about is to, when there are major policy discussions on potential items of interest, to discuss it. And so, again, want to share the year-long work of the community and the Hope Advisory Committee who made these recommendations in November of last year. The plan was to get it before the city board spring of this year. Clearly, we had a tornado that shifted some priorities, so we wanted to get this back on the agenda. So I would say very soon. But again, part of this policy process is clearly before it goes before the city board. We want to make certain that, city board members are able to weigh in before a vote. And so what I've heard today is that a couple city board members would like for this proposal to at least be shared with the CYF Commission. Definitely don't think that's a issue if it can get done before a certain period of time. But we do know that the city director, Kathy Webb, which we all look to in the great expert work that she does as relates to PIT, she's aware of this process, I don't, because I haven't spoken with her about it, this particular area. I know Mr. Harvey has, so I don't know if she's supportive or not, but I think her main concern, as it's been communicated to me, was making certain there's no duplication, and I think that's been addressed here today. Again, I know sometimes new things are hard to grasp initially, but again, I think, and I couldn't have said it better myself, Director Lewis, this commission is a public platform to share feedback about public safety. Now, if a part of that feedback is a request for funding, it comes before the city board. But I highly doubt you'll have a lot of requests for funding because most requests for funding have to be an organization. You have to be a nonprofit. You have to have a vehicle. That goes to PIT. This is really, again, about a public platform to share feedback. This is something that we see in cities that are leading in 21st century community policing. I'm grateful that we are leading that. I want to commend again Chief Helton and Chief Miller and Dyer and Ellison and Major Clark. Major Clark used to lead our 21st century community policing division. Our holistic approach is working. We're seeing violent crime go down. And we see that it's a combination of PIT and what we've been able to do with our community violence grants that came from the American Rescue Plan Act money in 22, which took us from spending in 2022 $5 million to close to $8 or $9 million. And we see what we've been able to do with this city board funding, more raises for our law enforcement officers and $10,000 bonuses and investing through the American Rescue Plan Act, the Real-Time Crime Center. There also, the residents are seeing that our officers and our leadership is focusing on the community. And so it's a three-pronged approach on how we do that. And that's the reason why we see this holistic approach working. This is a prong in that, from that standpoint. So that being said, part of this, to answer your question, is that we'll try to get before the CYF committee to just share with them, just very similar as we share with the board. But then ultimately come back before the board. So I would suspect, as Mr. Moore shared with me, we got a busy week coming up with the sales tax. And so more than likely it won't be the 15th. It could be, but it more than likely is going to be sometime. I think, Mr. Moore, would you say the next available time would be August 29th or September 5th?
Michael, when does the CYF meet next? So the first Wednesday is going to be September 6th. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just really a question on, again, as I want to share, we're bringing this because the community asked us to. And so if the community, if we visit with members of the Hope Council, they say, hey, let's wait a few more weeks, that's fine. But I feel obligated, I think the city board should as well, that when we ask residents to get involved in our community and they spend time, I mean, they spend a lot of hours over 10 months. And it's bigger than a press conference being behind the screen, but they actually left the press conference and were there 10 months and gave some great ideas and then came back with some recommendations. And quite frankly, this city is being lauded right now for our work and our violent crime going down. That's because of everyone here. So it's going to come before the city board. I'm going to definitely take the feedback. What I'm hearing is try to get it before CYF, before coming back before the city board. And that's the reason why we have this policy discussion. So we'll try to have it. If Mr. Moore said they just had it, so when would be the next available board date?
So they met on September 16th, I'm sorry, they meet on September 6th. So then the agenda meeting would be on the 12th and the board meeting would be September 19th.
Okay, well, we'll take a vote on September the 19th. And we will, Mr. Harvey, you'll make certain that this goes before CYF.
Yes, sir.
To share with them, to answer any questions. And then Director Adcock will make that commitment. I think that's a great idea about adding the city attorney to have a liaison, is what I heard from you. And I think Mr. Harvey addressed the reason why there's 6 at large. And I think it could be 5. I mean, it's not, I don't think that's a hard sell, but I think as he shared, there are other commissions that are a lot larger than that, but we kind of settled on 6, but I want to make certain we'll definitely include the city attorney liaison as feedback from you, and also feedback from Director Compuris to try to get before the CYF committee, which we will. Director Compuris, then.
Can we get a synopsis of other cities that have done this and what they've done?
Yes, we'll get a synopsis. Mr. Harvey will get that. I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
We'll put it in a memo form. All right, Mr. Moore. So, Mr. Moore, I guess we'll make, Mr. Harvey, you'll get with the city attorney office representative who worked on this. We'll add the city attorney liaison as a representative. Are you cool with that? All right. I think that's the only real substantive change or feedback that we received so far, outside of just making certain that we at least go before CYF before a vote. And Mr. Harvey, including talking points, Director Lewis, is public platform of feedback. That's what I was trying to say earlier. So. Oh, yes, ma'am. Then Director Miller.
Can we please not lose sentiment of the community? Because I remember not too long ago, it was the sentiment of the community wanted this curfew, and we pushed on that. So now sentiment of the community is asking for a public platform, and we're stalling. So I just want to make sure that all across the board, we're being equal and fair when it comes to the sentiment of our communities.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Director Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. And first off, I want to thank Chris for all the hard work. We had a chance to meet for about an hour and talk about a lot of these things. So I appreciate his work, appreciate all the efforts that's been going into this. In addition to the report that Director Compuris asked about what other cities are doing, it would certainly be helpful to me to also, when you do that, do these other cities have this PIT commission, and do they have the Citizens Review Commission also? So those would be, I'd like to see that as part of the report that you're going to get out. And as it relates to citizens being asked to do work and present information before this board, I know Director Phillips can talk about the work that was done by the political liaison committee, whatever that committee, the former government committee, and they did a lot of work, and we didn't act on any of those. So it's not that we don't appreciate the commission, these citizens, but again, we're the ultimate authority on that, and we're going to have to vote on that. And I've been in the past part of a bunch of citizen efforts, certainly Vision Little Rock, where we spent months and months of doing things, and all our stuff didn't get done, but again, it does not diminish the work that the citizens have been doing, and I want to acknowledge that. But again, this board is going to make the ultimate decision, and I don't want any citizens to feel slighted about that because, that's the way this board works. You can do a lot of work. We can come up with a lot of recommendations from the citizens. But if we don't agree to those, then we're not trying to rain on them. They did that work, but we've been elected to be the final authority on that. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that, because I don't want people to feel like we don't listen. We do listen. And I know before I got on this board, I put in hours and hours and hours that work with Vision Little Rock. I didn't feel slighted that all those recommendations weren't done. I felt there was something productive that came out of that. So, again, I just felt compelled to say that. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Director Miller. I think you're totally right. Again, I think it's the obligation that, just like you, with Vision Little Rock, you do the work, you provide the recommendations. Ultimately, the city board has to say yay or nay. And city board I guess we're going to schedule that on September the 19th. But totally appreciate that. Any more Director Cambiris? And
Just one comment.
sure.
Are we through with everything?
Mr. Moore?
Let me just, and we talked about this afternoon, and actually Mr. Carpenter, with his due diligence, brought it up, but we've always said that the city board would have to pass the ordinance by September 5th to call an election. Actually, we would be meeting after Pulaski County closes, so we have to have the ordinance to them before September 5th. So the mayor and I talked about probably a special meeting on the 29th. So just to make note of that, from a timing standpoint, if we decide to move forward, we'd have to do it before September 5th.
And again, that goes to, I think we got to be, that's the reason why we have these sales going. Now and Mr. Harvey, thank you. So I think the next step, Mr. Harvey, is to take the feedback from Director Adcock to include a city attorney liaison. We're definitely supportive of that. And please encourage the members of the Hope Advisory Council to attend, if possible, the CYF meeting in September, and then we will have a vote September 19th. Okay, I think that's kind of the next step. And so members of the city board, if there are any questions about this, please let us know. We want to make sure we get that information. I think Director Miller asked for, you want to know what cities have citizen review boards, what cities have PIT, and then what cities, there was a third.
Just
Had this.
what other people? What
Yeah, the public safety commissions.
And what they do?
And then, yes. I would say that, but also, again, this is a credit to Director Richardson and Director Campiris. There are not many cities that have a PIT. Yeah, there are not many cities that, and I just know that just from the industry standpoint. So that's a kudos to that city board who voted on that in the mid-90s. But Mr. Harvey will get all that information. And Mr. Harvey, when you get that, we'll make sure we get that to Mr. Flaherty. I know he's going to ask for it.
Definitely.
So thank you, Mr. Harvey. Going back to the sales tax discussion, again, I think members of the board, just to be kind of, be very frank, we really, as we're having these questions, we're going to have feedback over the next week, but I really we'll continue to engage as we're having these feedback questions as well, but definitely would like to get some more feedback on the proposal if you want to see some additional changes, because if we pursue it in November, that's the reason why Mr. Moore had to share the tight timeline. I think we all know there are a lot of set of realities that it doesn't look like March will be a possibility. So I'm going to be very frank. And so it looks like it's either going to be November of 23 or November of 24. But then also, just to be very candid, is, is that something that certain members of the city board, who are going to be up for election?
Why are you looking at me?
Well, I mean, well, we know, I think there's 3 at-large directors that are up for reelection, I believe, and Director Peck. And so that's another, that's another dynamic I think the city board needs, and clearly we can all wake up and tie our shoes at the same time. But I don't know if many members of the city board are going to want to run for a reelection and have that discussion going on at the same time. So I think we really need to hear from members of the board. If you don't think we need to pursue it, we're always going to have community feedback meetings. Let's have that conversation too. Because, time is time, and we got these dates that are coming. I know August 29th, you said 29th, Mr. Moore? That comes up really quick. And so, any comments, thoughts? Anyone want to discuss anything?
I have this is a logistical question, Mayor. Mr. Moore, City Manager, you said a special call meeting on the 29th? I think we have a regular meeting on the 29th anyway, right?
No, that's an agenda meeting. We have 5 Tuesdays. So we would have to have a special call meeting.
Oh, we're off on the 22nd.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So we will remain off on the 22nd and have an agenda meeting and a board meeting on the 29th?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that logistically. Mayor, and I'll just say from the community feedback standpoint, I do understand what you're saying. I suspect our residents want to talk to us about the sales tax, but if there isn't I think you used this word before, appetite for it, I don't want city staff in our community to come share a bunch of things, have a bunch of meetings if we're not going to have the vote. I don't want to waste staff's time or the people's time, so I would co-sign, as they say in the culture, what you're saying in that regard. I understand that.
So members of the city board, would you rather it in November of 23, March of 24? No, you don't have to share your hand, but be communicating that to me at some point, yeah.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I still think,
Mayor, I have my hand up.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Director.
I'll raise my hand. Okay, my hand.
Sorry, Director Peck.
No, go ahead.
Director Adcock?
Okay, last night, BJ and I discussed at Southwest Ups the calendar of dates and everything. The thing that most people wanted was infrastructure. Our drainage ditches, I talked this week, I had 3 complaints on drainage ditches. I talked to Mr. Wilcox out there. He told me that we were still looking at some of 2022 because now they're using all of the people to cleaning out drainage ditches to do the tornado area. And so we are so far behind. And one thing we heard last night, we want infrastructure, we want streets, we want speed bumps, we want drainage ditches cleaned out. The things in their neighborhoods, they want those things done out. So we're going out to 7 meetings, and then we're going to come back, and less than a week later, we're going to tell all these people, we're going to listen to you, we may have to change these things, we want to know what you want, and then in less than a week, we're going to come back and we're going to vote on this. That doesn't give us time to listen to the people and then come back together as a board and say, okay, this is what we heard, and now these are some of the things we need to change. I think the 29th is just pushing it so quickly when we're listening to people, and when are we going to have time to do what they say?
Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much, Director Adcock. I totally understand. Again, as I shared, things happen that we can't control. If it was my preference, we would have been having this discussion 3 or 4 months ago. but we had a tornado we had to tend to. But that doesn't stop the phone calls that you and Director Warwick are going to get no matter what happens, whether we vote for it or not. You're going to get a phone call about those nuts and bolts issues. And so I'm agreeing with you, Director Adcock. I guess what I'm sharing with you is in regards to the plan or changes, that doesn't take long to make the changes on this sheet. We have to get additional feedback. And again, there's already been feedback. We just had a slew of other meetings where residents said, hey, we got this funding. We want more funding. We want more work done. We know that. But we still want to continue to do more. That's what we're going to do. So I appreciate your feedback.
Okay, we have one big voting block out there that always votes yes, and Mr. Moore will agree with me, and it's the animal people. And there's nothing on this current list for the animal people. I had 3 calls this week saying, what is on this for the animal people, the animal village? And we need to look at how can we put something on there for those people, because those are voting people. And they all 3 said, if nothing's on there for the animals, we won't vote for it.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Well, thank you for that.
We need to look back.
Infrastructure and animals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Pat?
Thank you. I expressed this back when we first started talking about it, that I felt like we didn't have enough time. And Mayor, I completely understand the preference of having the election in November compared to having it in March. However, I would much prefer to wait until March because I don't think we have enough time to go out to the community. I know we were out about the bond issue, but this is something very different. I know we had the tornado to deal with, but I mean, for one, not that the world revolves around me, but I'm not going to be here on the 29th. I think it's a good start, to go out in the next couple of weeks to the different wards, but I just don't see there's any way to process this, in time enough. So I, for one, would like to do this in March. And I think that most of the people I've talked to would feel the same way. I know I'm getting emails, phone calls, I know we all are, and I'm hearing a lot of the same issues that Director Adcock just expressed, more for infrastructure. But I'm also hearing other things about parks in West Little Rock, how about, a dog park in Ward 5? I'm hearing some concerns about the sports complex. Is War Memorial the best spot for it? Can we leave War Memorial a green space? Hearing a lot about more money for the LRPD, for the firefighters. So I feel so rushed, and I think everybody does, but we'll all come back and report after we have these 7 meetings. I just won't be here on the 29th. So my vote is to wait till March.
If we take a vote for November, we'll make certain the vote doesn't happen on the 29th.
Okay.
Director Lewis?
I was just going to ask, because I share Director Adcock's sentiments as well about the infrastructure and the speed bumps and all that, because those are the major concerns that I get, along with some other things. But as I stated before, those are some that are still on this long laundry list that we have. So would it be guaranteed that the funds raised from this sales tax will go to that? Because I just feel like my meeting is going to be this, talking about infrastructure and the parks. That part is being addressed already, thankfully, with Parks and Recreation and how they're having those improvements already started. So that's just my question. Would this be addressed with this? Because that'll ease their minds.
Yes, it will, but also I want to be very transparent that when it comes to infrastructure spending and the history of the city board always splitting the funds equally, we will always have that big list. So that's number one. So I don't want you to think we'll continue to tack things off the list. And I think too, I think city board members may forget that in 2011, from 2011 to 2021, there were 2 bond programs going at the same time. And so there was a lot of work being going on. Right now, we just got one bond program going, which is the millage extension. And so, yes, there will still be a list, but there'll be more things coming off the list. But I think at a certain point, not anytime soon, the city board definitely, if we want to really make a dent, a seismic dent into this billion-dollar infrastructure woes that we have, we got to really we really have to move from equality in our infrastructure spending to equity as relates to when you look at geographic, topography, you look at economic output and being underserved. And so that way, the great example is we know, we should already have Chenal and Canis already built. Just go finish it out. And when you do that, you're going to create a whole lot of economic output that we can handle some other things that are, having some other issues. But it may take $2 million, but Director Warwick only has $1 million to do it. And so that's just an infrastructure spending. We've done an infrastructure study group before and on how you do that to get more bang for your buck, but that's a longer conversation. But to answer your question, yes, things will come off that list, but you're still going to have a big list.
So how can we move forward to not necessarily every ward getting the same amount, but addressing which wards need the most help?
Well, the city has done an infrastructure study group. We know how it can be done. And actually, Director Warwick was on that. Your predecessor was on that. They worked with John Honeywell again. Worked for about a year. We got that playbook, but ultimately, the city board decided they didn't want to move there. So ultimately, it's just a vote on whether or not you all want to do that. From that standpoint, I think too, again, I think that's a longer conversation. I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I do think that's something that could be very beneficial. Director Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize, I had to leave for just a minute. I'm not sure what Director Adcock said, but I looked at the streets and drainage that we had on the list from the millage when we were trying to determine what streets to use for that. And based on the totals on that for Ward 7, we need $29+ million for streets and drainage. And I've got a couple of people that have popped up, and their information was not even on the list. And so I don't know that it's a comprehensive list of all the streets and drainage issues that we have. So, and I've already brought this up before, that 70 million divided 7 ways plus overhead, that's a drop in the bucket for what we need to do in Ward 7. But I did want to tell you what the count and the amount was for Ward 7. The other thing I wanted to say is I want to hear what the community has to say. And I'm so thankful that we're going to have these meetings. So I hope we get a good turnout for people that will come and address what we have in the package. The last thing that I wanted to say was if we're going to vote on this on the 29th, on our list of meetings, there's one on the 30th.
August 31st, I was just looking at that. It'll either be the August 31st or the 1st.
Okay, where'd the 29th come from?
That's a Tuesday. We were just thinking about a Tuesday. Okay. Yeah.
Y'all changed your mind while I left the room. Okay. All right. Well, I just want to make sure that Ward 3 had their opportunity for a meeting. So anyway, that's where I am tonight.
So what I'm hearing, which is good, is grateful for all this feedback today. I'm hearing more infrastructure spending. I also heard Director Adcock brought up animals funding. Okay.
Well, Mayor, I got a 311 dump. I just got it today that I'm looking at all the 311 requests that have come into Ward 7. And it's already been categorized for me. And so I'm going back and looking at the big spreadsheet with all the information on it. So I'm looking at that because we get so many requests, so many phone calls for different services. And one of the things that was on there was there are several for animal control. And I haven't really delved into it to understand what all that means. But I'm looking at that as well, because if we're gonna, I want to try to improve the quality of life at the home. I know a lot of these are quality of life in general for the community, but the investment for your home is probably the largest investment that you'll ever make, and you need to feel comfortable with your kids and your family, and so that's why I want to go through the 311 report.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Director Phillips.
Yes, Mayor, and I guess this is clarification for those watching, because I think Director Wire brought up a good point. So there's a Ward 3 meeting scheduled for August 30th, so we would not vote before the Ward 3 meeting. So we have a special meeting, we're doing it on the Thursday. Is that what we're saying?
We'll visit with each of you all either it'll either be August 31st or September 1st. Because of the timeline we have of September 5th.
Okay. All right, understood. And I'll just point out, since we're going around the table, some of the things that I've heard about the amount for the Museum of Fine Arts, and will follow up on the request for how much money we've allocated or spent and allocated for the museum going forward. Like Director Peck, I've had people ask me not about the soccer fields or the baseball fields at War Memorial, but about the indoor facility and whether that should be somewhere else. So that's a concern that's been addressed to me. But as it relates, if you're taking a tally of sorts, Mayor, if you need to know whether I would rather vote in November 24 or November 23 or March of 24, I think is the prospects of this passing in March of 24 are less likely than in November of 23. So I would prefer that we do it in November 23. So those are my comments for now. And I'm having a few meetings this week, Mayor, so next week I'll be able to kind of drill down about some of the parks things I've been hearing, and I'll share that with you and the board next Tuesday.
All right. Any questions from members of the board? And Director Phillips, I would agree with you, I just think it's highly unlikely that we could be successful in March of 24. And so I want to put our best foot forward again. Well, we'll figure that out, whether it's November 23, March of 24, or November of 24, but we got time. We'll transition as we shared. We're going to kick it off with Director Peck on August the 14th. We'll finish on August 30th. I think we all talk to each other. There'll be a lot of conversations. So we'll figure that out in regards to what'll be in the package. And hopefully we can get to a vote for November. Again, this doesn't happen without the city board. It has to be referred to the people. But I do want to stress March. It's less than likely passing the time just due to the set of realities being a presidential primary, just being very candid. So, and we're talking about taxes. So even though we know it's an investment and we believe people will believe in it, it's just a lot of realities happening during that period of time. But we'll figure that out together, again, whether it's November 23, March of 24, or November 24. All right, Mr. Director Pierce.
Well, to end on a good note, I presume we're ending. I'd like personally and the board to thank Attorney General Tim Griffin and Jimmy Moses for forming a public-private partnership to take the Boyle building and move all of their employees to 5th and Main. And I'd like to thank President Clinton and Secretary Clinton for continuing to trust and reinvest in Little Rock with a huge expansion to the Clinton Library and offering different opportunities for our community. And I'd like to also thank the Arkansas Symphony that on Thursday will have their groundbreaking for a building right at the corner of Heifer and Clinton. So for all the people that say that nothing ever happens good in this town, there's 3 things in a week that are happening. And then if you take the dental school, you take the vet school and everything else that's going on, and the deck park and the new park. There's all types of things that are in the future. Now, I may not be here to see it, and Antoine may be the one running them, but that's okay. But these are things that I think we all need to acknowledge, and especially those first three, thank them for investing back in our community.
No, thank you so much, Director Campuris, for highlighting that. I totally concur with you. That being said, we'll see, I guess, at our next meeting, and of course, August 14th, we'll hear from the community. Thank you, everyone.